Effortless API provides a fully functional, secure, authenticated, on-demand backend API for your data wherever it lives. We're going to be using Airtable today, and specifically an office inventory database which has a list of employees and their devices, snack orders, furniture, and so forth. Jenny is the CEO. She's the administrator. Neil is an employee. Airtable has an API, but it's a one-size-fits-all API. So if a user has access to edit any of the data in the database, they will have access to edit any of the data in the database. If we wanted these employees to be able to log into the system and only manage their own devices and their own snack orders and their own employee record, Airtable's API would not allow that. For that, we need a proxy server. That's what Effortless API will do for us. In the API playground, I currently have 2 projects defined. We're going to add a third. I will select New Effortless API for Airtable and follow the instructions by going to the API documentation for the Airtable, pressing F12 to go to the console, pasting the JavaScript from the Effortless API website, which simply produces this information as JSON. I will copy that JSON blob and paste it over here. And the Effortless API discovery process finds that we have employees. Each employee has devices, snack orders, and furniture linked to their record. On the next page, I can pick which field we will use to identify our users. Users are identified by their email address. In this case, it will be employees that sign in, and role will dictate what permissions they have. Starting a new project, we'll add the appropriate tables and roles and columns to the project and create an API for us. This office inventory project is the one that was just added. This project has 3 actors, guest, user, and admin, managing 4 things: devices, employees, furniture, and snack orders. If we go to the design, these 3 actors can be customized here. In this case, I'm going to change user and instead call it employee, since that's who will be logging in. And in the employee can access, I'm going to allow employees to only access their own devices. So I will give them access to devices, read access specifically, but only where the owner email address is equal to the current employee email address. In other words, the employee who is currently signed in. Now, employee can read devices, but only where owner email address is the same as the email address of the current user. Other than that, by default, they don't have access to any of the other tables for right now. Having made that change, I can also add custom messages that can be sent between these different kinds of actors. So for example, an employee might be able to say, "Hi, admin," to administrators. So now employee can say, "Hi, admin," and admin can hear, "Hi, admin," from employee. That will show up later. I will now go to the Publish tab and click Publish, which will first discover the size and shape of the API that we just described. It will then write code, build a Docker container, and publish that Docker container up to AWS. That will take 2 or 3 minutes. While it's building, let's go to the documentation and take a look at these seed projects. A seed project is a repository of code published on GitHub as open source, which has the potential to become a particular kind of technology based on our API. So we have an Airtable API. We can create an Okveo web app, or a .NET console app, or a Python console app, or a native iOS or Android app, or an Ionic app. Today we're going to create a .NET app and an Okveo web app. So to start with, I will click on .NET, Our Effortless API is for Airtable, and this will create a .NET Core console app based on our API. These deployment instructions explain how to do that. This is a link to the open source repository, and I will start by looking at that. What you'll notice in here is that while there is some code, there are data classes, for example. There are no data classes for employee or furniture or devices. This is just a seed. It's potential code. Having clicked on the link, we would then click fork. I've already done that, so I can skip to the next step. Put in my GitHub username, which is EEJAI42. And on the following page are some instructions that will first clone the repository, start Visual Studio Code, and then write .NET code that will allow us to talk to our API. I will simply copy these instructions by clicking the copy button, opening up PowerShell and pressing paste. Before I actually run these commands, I need to make sure that the container is started and that the publish succeeded. So I will go to the publish command and confirm that it finished building. And I will go to the status page and click Start to start the container. The container takes about 30 seconds to come online. Now that the container has started, I will run the clone command. That launches Visual Studio, and in the background it is connecting to the API and writing classes for devices, employees, furniture, snack orders, etc. And in the console app, programs.cs, we can begin to customize our code. To begin with, your project URL needs to be replaced with customer office inventory, which is the name of the project we just created. It creates a guest user and tries to authenticate. We want to authenticate as the CEO first. Then it validates temporary access token and calls admin dot, in this case, get, and we can get devices, employees, furniture, or snack orders. I'm going to get devices. The reply will also include devices, and we will print that to the screen. When I press F5, it will compile the code, and we should get a list of devices. In this way, .NET has been used to securely connect to this Airtable and retrieve the list of devices from the database. Before I go any further with .NET, I'm going to start another project building. I'm going to go to the docs. I'm going to go to the Acqueo Web Administrative seed, follow the same instructions. Here again, I have already forked the open source repository. My username is still EEJAI42. But similarly, I will copy these instructions and start the web app building. The web app takes about 5 minutes to install all of the packages. So I will let that run in the background while we continue to work on our .NET program. Here we've retrieved a list of devices as CEO. If I change the login to instead connect as Neil, who is not an administrator, he's just an employee, he should not see all the devices, he should only see the devices which belong to him. The first thing that will happen, however, is that as written, the code currently tries to use this admin user to get a list of devices. Neil is not an administrator. So our Effortless API complains and says that get devices requires admin access. Instead, we need to change this. Instead of being an administrator, we will make the user Neil. And instead of an SMQ admin, we will use an SMQ employee. And now, Neil is an employee, so employee.getDevices will work, but it won't return all the devices for employees. It will only return Neil's devices. And Neil has 2 devices. If we go back to CEO, admins can also add devices. So payload.device equals new device. And we get IntelliSense. So we get name, new.net device, and serial number, and admin.addDevice will put that device into the database. I will bring up the list of devices in the background, and I will run the .NET program one more time. And in the background, we get a new .NET device, serial number 12345. So we can read, we can write, we can control who can access which data inside the Airtable from .NET. We can also make changes. So if we want to keep track of each employee's favorite color, for example, we could simply add a new field, favorite color, red, green, blue, etc. And then we can rebuild our API, which will then include favorite color. I will go to the docs and reload them. I will rerun the JavaScript to extract the JSON description of our Airtable. In EffortlessAPI, on the Design tab, I will go to the Sync tab and paste my JSON. And when we click Synchronize Airtable Now, it adds the new field. And now if we look at our employee table, it now has employee and favorite color, along with name and furniture and devices. Having added favorite color to the design, clicking Publish here will cause it to rewrite the API, now including favorite color, and publish a new copy of the container to AWS. In the meantime, let's continue looking at our .NET code. In addition to being able to add new devices, admin can also decide what to do when an employee says hi. So we have an event handler, employee hi admin received, and we can write a handler, handle hi from employee, and so we get a handler that will run every time an employee says hi admin. This code will run, and we have access to anything passed into the payload, including devices, employee information, furniture information, or snack orders. On the EffortlessAPI tab, this finished publishing, and if I go to the status, I can monitor the new container coming online. Right now, the new container is starting, and the previous container, which does not have favorite color, is also still running. Now both are running, so both the previous and the new instance are running. Once the new container comes online, both are running, and after a few seconds, the previous container stops and only the new container is running at that point. Once the new container is running, we can go back to our .NET project, and I can simply type sotimi build, and it will update the code such that now e.payload.employee.favorite color is now a field of employee, and we get IntelliSense because we added it to the design. Similarly, that same update will also apply to our web app. So rather than being .NET code, this is a web app with a few sample pages in this data folder, and in the data folder we have devices, employees, furnitures, and snack orders. To connect this to our endpoint, we just need to go to the app modules And similarly to the .NET app, put the name of our endpoint in here, customer office inventory. With that compiled successfully, we can go into a web browser and at localhost 4200, we get our Acqueo web app. I can log in as CEO. And on the data page, I now have devices, employees, snack orders. I can add new records. I can delete existing records. If we look at our devices, here's our new .NET device. With our web app, I can delete it. I can only delete it, though, because I'm an administrator, because I'm the CEO. If I log in as Neil, now when I look at the Data tab and I go to Devices, I don't see all devices. In fact, I don't see any devices because it can't load the employee actor. By default, employees are not loaded in the web app. All I have to do, though, is take where it's loading the admin actor, make a copy of that line, and have it load employee as well, which in our system is a thing. And now Neil sees his devices. But he can't delete devices. If he clicks on delete, nothing happens because employee doesn't have a method for delete. So there's still a button here because the seed isn't advanced enough to know which user does and doesn't have permission, but it doesn't work because employees don't have permission to delete devices. Only admins do. This is Effortless API.